I just think I'll give it another minute because I think there's a few more guests joining. So do bear with me. We're going to start in about a minute's time.
This isn't what I've got.
Okay, good evening. I think we'll get going now. If anyone else does join, I can see the participant list so I can let them in as we go. And throughout the meeting, if you have any questions, do pop them in the chat because I can see those as well. So welcome. For the benefit of anybody who's not yet met me, my name is Susie Green. I have the absolute privilege of being the head of sixth form at Finnan Park School. And this is the first of a series of remote meetings that I'll be running over the next year and a half before your children leave year 13. Just keeping you informed of various things to try and make sure that you are in the best position to support your child. I met a number of you at Meet the Mentor, so those of you who attended that, welcome back. It's lovely to see you again. And for the benefit of anyone who couldn't quite attend Meet the Mentor, it's lovely to meet you for the first time. So the purpose of today's session is to talk about careers and to talk a little bit about UCAS. For anyone who doesn't know what UCAS means, it stands for the University and College Application System, and it's an online system through a website where students can submit applications for university or for colleges. Clearly, it goes without saying that not everybody will be interested in applying to university or college, and this talk will cover all different career possibilities that students will be interested in, but that's just one of the things we will talk about. This meeting is going to be recorded, so if you do type anything in the chat or whatever, or you do say anything, do just be aware the meeting will be recorded. Obviously, not everybody can attend, so I'm going to send the recording out with the newsletter I send out tomorrow. And finally, before we actually begin, a number of people contacted me saying, why are we talking about careers so early on in the period of time the students are at sixth form? They've only just started. The reason is, even though their applications they will be making to their post-18 options feel like a really long way away, they'll come round so quickly. And so if we don't get them sorted now and we don't start the process of thinking about what we do need to do now, they're just going to be disadvantaged. And so it's really important. Well informed is forearmed, and it's really important as a school we equip both the students and yourselves with the knowledge they're going to need. So here we go. The purpose of this meeting is to talk about careers and what students need to be doing now, really, to put themselves in the strongest position. As we know, career paths are getting more and more competitive, and students are absolutely having to make themselves stand out if they're interested in certain career paths. And we're going to really talk about lots of things related to that. You can see on the slide a list of things I'm going to talk about. I'm not going to read them all out to you, but I'll give you a minute just to have a look. Okay, so clearly students when they leave the sixth form have a number of different options available to them. The most popular option for Finnan Park students, last year around 80% of students applied to university, is a university option. They have two options. They can either apply to university starting September 2025, meaning that they will go off to university just a few weeks after finishing sixth form, or they can apply for university with a deferred entry. Now, a deferred entry means that they do their application while they're at school, but they note on their application that they want to defer their entry by a year, meaning that any offers that are made to them will be to start in September 2026. This is slightly different to taking a gap year and applying later than your peers. This will mean students will get the benefit of all of the application writing support available within school. They'll just note that they want to defer. This is good for students who know what they want to do. They're clear on the course that they want to study, but they maybe think they want a gap year. They either want to travel or get some work experience or something like that, meaning that it is worth them applying while they're in school. There'll be some students who want a gap year who also think they want to go to university, but don't know what they want to apply for. The reality is, if a student doesn't know what they want to apply for, there's absolutely no purpose of them applying while they're in school, because any personal statement would be quite generic. They wouldn't be able to show maybe the passion for that subject if it wasn't what they absolutely wanted to do, meaning they would be unlikely to be successful. And in those cases, we recommend the students have a gap year and apply in the autumn term after they have left year 13. This works very well. Each year we have around 10-15 students who do this. They speak to us before they leave. We liaise with them throughout the autumn term, and they can pop into school to get support as and when they need it. If your child is in this position, parents often panic and think that it's something that will be really tricky for them. Actually, not the case. We can get their application gone usually in October, meaning that if they want to then go and travel or something like that, that can be a really good idea. Gap years for me are something that every child should consider. I did not take a gap year. It's one of my biggest regrets. It's not something that was really done when I went through school. And now I would say one of the things that I regret more than anything is that I didn't have that opportunity. I would say if your child wants to travel or wants to do something like that, get a job, volunteer, whatever it might be, if they don't do it when they're 18, they're much less likely to do it in the future. In my experience, students who take gap years and do something exciting with them are in a much more mature and adult position when they go off to university, and often tend to succeed more at that end. Now, clearly, lots of people will be sat there thinking, well, that's lovely, but gap years just aren't within our means. Not so. If a child decides they want to do a gap year now and they put their mind to it and they work and they are handy with their time and they think creatively about what job they do outside of school, actually students can save an awful lot very quickly. We find that once students finish their A-levels, if they get a full-time job, all their friends have gone off to uni, they can work for a few months and save up quite a lot of money very quickly without relying on any financial support from their family. So it absolutely is an option. Now, apprenticeships are hugely gaining in popularity. So a few years ago, we had hardly any students going for apprenticeships. Last year, it was many more, and they continue to grow in popularity. Degree apprenticeships are long apprenticeship courses. They're sometimes 5 or 6 years, but the students will do a degree, a sponsored degree, as part of their apprenticeship. For example, they might spend 3 days a week or 4 days a week working for a company, being trained, then 1 or 2 going to a local university. At the end of the period of time, they'll be really lucky, actually, because not only will they have a number of years work experience in their chosen field, but they'll also have a degree and they'll have no student debt. Sounds like the dream. It is the dream. The problem is that they're very competitive. They are probably more competitive than places at Oxford, Cambridge, the Russell Group universities, because there aren't many of them on offer yet. So that's, if students are interested in a degree apprenticeship, it's really important they get ahead. Then there's apprenticeships. So these are apprenticeships without the degree. So a student will work at a company and they'll have a training program as part of that. Usually, if they do well at either an apprenticeship or a degree apprenticeship, they'll be offered a job at the end. College courses, we all know what those are. People often don't realise that colleges offer courses at post 18, but all the colleges, Coventry, Leamington, Stratford, and the ones further afield, have a post 18 programme. This is great for students who possibly want to do something a bit more practical and a degree just isn't right for them, or an apprenticeship, a workplace isn't right for them yet, or indeed students can go straight into employment. So those are really the pathways available to students. There are, of course, some very niche pathways. Some students choose to go into the armed forces, things like that. But those are the pathways the majority of the students at Finham Park Sixth Form choose to take. So in order to prepare yourselves and students for this, we put on a series of different things that are useful for them. And this is the key dates. This is really the structure of what's going to happen. So after half term, your child will get their first progress check. You probably noted from the bulletin that there is another meeting in a few weeks' time after school for parents looking at how to read their child's progress check, because the way we do progress checks at post 16 is very different to the way that progress checks are done at either Finham or a different school from years 7 to 11. And so hopefully you'll be able to read that, and that'll be the first indication for you of how your child is doing academically. Then in January, the students have more in-class assessments, and that is followed in March by the Year 12 Parents' Evening. That is online. You'll get information about it after Christmas, so do look out for that. And then in the summer, the weeks beginning 1st of July and 8th of July, they have their end of year exams. We call those progression exams. They will be formal exams. The students will do them in exam venues, and they will try and emulate the A-levels as much as possible. Then on the 11th and 12th of July, they will have the careers conference. This is our 2 days entirely dedicated to careers, and really we break the back of students making applications at that point. So it's very important throughout this year prior to the careers conference that students have had a really good think about what they might want to do. So next year, so at the end of the summer term, before they leave, we ask for a first draft of their personal statement. Do not fear, as part of the careers conference, they have almost a full day with their mentor to do most of this. We're not expecting them to write their personal statement while they're preparing for their exams. We do build the time into the curriculum, but we ask them to submit a first draft by the end of the summer term. At the end of September, we ask for the next draft, and that is for everybody. And then the 6th of October is our internal early entry deadline. For the benefit of anyone who doesn't know what early entry deadline is, students who want to apply to university, but specifically Oxford, Cambridge, veterinary medicine, dentistry, or medicine, have to apply to UCAS earlier than everybody else. Now, everybody will need to write a personal statement. If you want to apply for an apprenticeship, you have to have a personal statement. If you want to apply for a degree, you have to have a personal statement. But the things that you have to prepare for early entry are ever so slightly different, and the deadline is much earlier. So we will speak to students who come forward and express an interest in that much sooner. At the end of October, we expect the third draft of the personal statement, and the 30th of November is our internal UCAS deadline. So anyone who wants to apply for university needs to have sent off their application by the end of November. Those of you who have previous children having come through or work in education will know that the actual UCAS deadline is not until January. However, with year groups of over 200, if we don't ask for the deadline by the end of November, then we can't check them all. Obviously, if someone submits their application in December, we will send it, but we're unlikely to be able to check it. The students who want to apply for things like apprenticeships, we ask for their personal statements to be written by them, again, so we can check them. They will apply throughout the autumn term and spring term, depending on what apprenticeships they want to apply for. So every year parents say to me, why is your deadline so early? So the first year I was head of sixth form, I didn't do this. I didn't ask everyone to get their applications in. And we had tons and tons of students who submitted their applications on the day of the deadline. That meant as a school, we just couldn't check them. I'm sure some of them will have gone off with mistakes. It also meant that students left their applications and they were writing them at the last minute while they were trying to do their January mock examinations in year 13. It meant that their predicted grades were a lot harder to manage because they were trying to write an application and prepare for exams at the same time. And in terms of the mental health and well-being for students, every year that we have asked them to submit applications early, the student voice that's come out of it, every single one of them has said thank you so much. And so we do it really for the benefit of the students, but also to give ourselves space to make sure that those applications are all checked. We read every line of every application before we send them off. Now, obviously, this feels like a lot. So we make sure there's lots of support available. Now, students at this stage can sometimes feel overwhelmed by the fact that there's a lot to think about. And so if your child may well be listening to this meeting with you, and if they are feeling overwhelmed by the thought of having to think about careers already, or if as things progress, they feel overwhelmed, then it's absolutely essential they seek support quickly rather than waiting until they're really, really struggling. So on the screen, you can see all the people that they can seek support from. Firstly, you should have an idea of who your child's mentor is. The mentor is always the first port of call. In my newsletter a few weeks ago, I sent out all the mentors' emails, so hopefully you've got the email address of your child's mentor. If not, just contact me. Email them straight away as soon as you have any concerns. Miss Armitage, our wellbeing queen, or Mrs Davis, our academic mentor, are great resources. Mrs Davis actually used to work at a university, so she's a real goldmine of information. Mrs Gosler and Mr Shepherd are my assistant heads of sixth form. They are absolute gurus on all of this. Laura, our lovely counsellor, she does have a waiting list, but it's much shorter than the waiting list at the NHS. If students are feeling concerned, let's get them on the waiting list. Mrs Hook, our careers advisor, again, goldmine of information. It goes without saying her priority has to be year 11, but she does have slots in the year where she will prioritise the sixth form. And also we have Mr Jeffries, our exams manager, who will support students through aspects of this. For example, if they need to do an admissions test as part of their university application. So that's an intro, really. The next thing I want to talk to you about, and this is going to make up the main part of the meeting, is what students should be doing now. So your child probably hasn't made a definitive decision about what they want to do at the end of year 13. Some of them have. Some of them told me before they even started the sixth form they know what they're going to do, but the majority of them won't have done. So this is what they should be doing now. The first thing they need to be doing is research. And it is really important that that research starts now. So next week is half term. That would be a really good opportunity to sit down with your child and start supporting them to do some research. I'll send out this presentation, as I said, but what you can see in front of you are lots of links. So the top two are university research websites. UCAS has got tons of information. As I told you at the beginning, it's the University College Application Service, and SACU is a website, it sort of parodies off UCAS. And both of them have got information about all the courses offered at every university, what modules are done, what the accommodation is like, and so students can start looking at courses if they think they're interested in university to see what sort of course would appeal to them. The next two links are about apprenticeships, and again they have big lists of lots of apprenticeships, degree apprenticeships, who offers them, what they involve, if it's a degree, which university it's with. And again, if your child thinks they might be interested in apprenticeships, doing some research just to see what's out there at this stage is really important. We have students who think, oh, I want to do an apprenticeship in a certain field, and they haven't actually looked to see what's available, and then realise too late, the deadline for that apprenticeship is right at the start of year 13, and that's really sad. We can't do that research for every single child, so we really recommend that they get on with that. The bottom link is for people who want to do maybe something slightly different. They want to go into employment, they might want to join the armed forces, and that's more generic careers service that will have information about lots of different careers. So as I said, the first step is that students should be doing research to begin to equip themselves with a bit of an idea of what they want to do. I'm not saying that students have to have made a decision about what they want to do by next week, but it is important they start thinking about it. So the next thing that students need to start doing, once they've sort of categorised themselves into university, apprenticeship, college, or indeed have decided they're going to apply for more than one course or more than one option, which is another great option as well, is to reflect on their subjects or their courses. If they want to apply for university, they have to pick 5 courses. You can apply for fewer, but that's not really very sensible because you have to pay to apply, so you may as well put in 5 choices because you never quite know what's going to happen. So if your child wants to go to university, then something for them to think about is what subjects they enjoy. Would they want to do an academic course or something more practical? Do they want to try something completely new? There are a number of courses at university they just won't have studied. And also, what are they realistically going to be happy doing every day for several years? This is something for them to think about regardless of the pathway they want to take. Unlike A-levels where they do 3 or 4, unlike GCSEs where they did 10, the thing they pick now they are going to be doing literally every day for a number of years. Now, I'm a maths teacher. We have kids who like maths. Do they like maths so much they want to do maths literally every day, Monday to Friday, and probably the weekends for 4 years? And it's really important they go through that thought process. Students often don't sit and really reflect on the intensity of a degree course and the fact that they are committing to that being the thing they're going to do. Same with apprenticeships, in fact, even more so with apprenticeships, because if an apprenticeship is successful, in all likelihood, you will end up working there for a period of time. And so it could not be more important to have a think about whether that's what you want to do. Does your child have a career in mind? If they have a career in mind, great, look for apprenticeships in that career, or look for degree courses that will facilitate that. To be honest, unless they want to be a doctor or a vet or something, there aren't many careers that their degree choice will be limiting, but there definitely are careers that their degree choice will help. If they want to go into finance, something like maths or economics will be a lot more helpful to them than, say, a degree in art. A degree in art will be brilliant, however, if they want to go into graphic design or media or something like that. Where in the country or world do they want to live? It's a big thing. What they pick next will influence what they do. We have some students who want to stay at home, they want to be in Coventry, they want to maybe study at Coventry University or Warwick or something. And we have some students who want to just pack and go. And again, either's fine, but it's important they decide that or they reflect on that fairly early. And also, do they want to travel? Because if students want to travel, but they want to go straight to a job or university, there are plenty of options for university courses with a year abroad, for jobs where they can travel with their job, probably apprenticeships where they can do some travel. So again, that's really important to reflect on. So I cannot reinforce this one enough. What students should be doing now is attending open days. The open days they can attend are for university. Most apprenticeship providers offer open days, especially the big ones. Colleges offer open days, and I cannot emphasize enough that it's really important students go to open days now. The reason for that is there are 3 waves of open days. There's now, there's in the summer, and then there's next autumn. By next autumn, really it's too late. They can go next autumn, but in their applications, Year 13's applications are heading in the direction of being wrapped up now. We've already sent lots of them to university. If they're leaving it until this time next year, it's too late, really. They can go in the summer, but again, they'll be preparing for their end of Year 12 exams. Going now just makes the most sense. The website I put there has a list of open days for universities. It's not all inclusive, but it's a good start, but it's worth looking on university and college websites. If your child wants to attend a university open day or a college open day, you'll be able to book in advance. We will authorise a day off school for it, but we need you to just send us the booking so we know that the child's not just having a day off. And in a minute, we'll talk about what to do with open days. Apprenticeship providers, you're less likely to be able to book an open day, but I recommend emailing them and just letting them know you're coming as a bit of a courtesy. I know JLR did one a couple of weeks ago, and a number of our students went and said it was very good. So the next thing that students should be doing now is focusing on their studies and assessments. Every year, students get to Year 13, they have a look at their predicted grade, and they're not all students, and some students are disappointed. The reason for that is that we have to use the work they've done throughout Year 12 and the start of Year 13 to inform their predicted grade. Your child will need a predicted grade regardless of whether they apply for apprenticeships, university, college, and even some employers will ask for them. And we cannot predict grades that we do not think the child is going to get. UCAS keep a little track of what we predict and what the students get, and it's really important we focus on being as accurate as possible. And so if students think, and some do every year, if students think I'm not going to give it my all in Year 12, I'm going to wait until Year 13, they could find themselves disadvantaged for their predicted grades. Predicted grades for information will be released through Frog at the start of Year 13, and students will get the opportunity to appeal. So again, I don't want to cause too much panic. If your child knows that what they've done in Year 12 just isn't good enough, they will have a chance to appeal, but that appeal will have to be evidence-based. And as I said, the work students do now will impact their predicted grades, so it's really important. It's a key focus. It wouldn't be fair of me not to communicate with you that what students are doing now will impact that. So do make sure you have a chat with your child about that. So the next thing students should be doing now is improving their CV or their application. What I mean by that is not that they should be writing their CV now or their application now, it's that they should be doing things that will enable them to have a strong CV or application when they do write it. So for example, it's really important if your child wants to do a degree or a college course that they do some relevant background reading and they're reflective and critical on it. Because if they write a university personal statement, one of the things that universities value are relevant background reading and students being able to refer to that. It's really important that they do relevant work experience. If they want to be a designer and they go and do work experience in a butcher shop, that's not going to make any difference. It really needs to be relevant to their field. And it's never a bad idea for them to do some volunteering. Now, I know that volunteering, especially in this financial climate, is difficult, but if it is something that's at all possible for the child to do, it does make their application look much stronger. I recommend that students read relevant news articles. So this is for any course, regardless of what they want to go into. Being aware of the news and what's going on in their chosen field is very important, and that they watch television, podcasts, documentaries about their chosen field. Now, if your child wants to go into something like art, music, film, anything where they might need a portfolio, it's important they start to build that now. The reason is universities or colleges who ask for portfolios, or indeed apprenticeships, so some of the art apprenticeships want portfolios, they will often ask for it before interview, and sometimes students are in a bit of a panic or a bit of a scramble to get it together. So I really recommend that children start thinking about what could go in a portfolio now. As you know, every week we have an outside speaker come into school to do a talk. If that talk is relevant to your child's chosen field, absolutely essential they attend. It's another thing they can mention. Also, we have students who manage to obtain work experience off the back of the talks we offer. So the next thing students should be doing, and I want to be really, really careful with this, is some relevant extracurriculars. But this comes with a really big disclaimer. So firstly, I think extracurricular activities are great. I think it's really good for students to do extracurricular activities because they help them become a well-rounded person. They help their education, they give them life skills, leadership skills. However, on an application, especially an application for something very competitive, such as a degree apprenticeship or for Oxford or Cambridge, something like that, unfortunately, extracurricular activities don't make a great deal of difference to their application unless they're very, very relevant. So for example, if a child has run the debating society and they want to do an academic degree in something like law, that is relevant. But the fact they've been on a sports team isn't going to make a great deal of difference for their law application. And generally, we recommend they only put a sentence or two down about extracurriculars on their application. It's really sad, and it's not something I agree with, because I think extracurricular activities have an awful lot of benefit to the child. But when I was at school, I basically went around trying to collect extracurricular activities for my application to university. Turned out I couldn't use any of them, and no one told me that. And so I think it's really important students know that. To be clear, students, if you're listening, absolutely do extracurricular activities because you enjoy them, but don't sit through something you don't enjoy because of the fact that you think it might look good on your application. Unless it's directly relevant to the course, job, whatever it is you want to do, it isn't going to make a great deal of difference. So that is a whistle-stop tour that I've given you of what students need to be doing now. As I said, if that was too much, then I will send the PowerPoint out so you can revisit it with your child, and I'll send the recording of the meeting out. But that was a whistle-stop tour of what students must be prioritising now. So before I finish, I'm just going to give you a few bits of advice about what to do when you visit an open day. So this is an open day for college, for university, for apprenticeships, whatever. So don't just turn up. Make a plan in advance. A lot of open days require you to book and will turn you away if you don't. If you've slogged all the way up to Lancaster University and you haven't booked, that will be a shame, so make sure you do. And it's important that students think about travel and how they're going to get there. University open days particularly are really overwhelming. So if you're attending a university open day, look in advance of the schedule, because there'll be talks, seminars, taster sessions often all over a city, because especially with city universities, they might have all of their buildings open and you won't be able to do everything. So it's really important that you plan that day really carefully so that you can access the things that are a priority for you. Plan questions for different people. You'll be able to talk to some lecturers, you'll be able to talk to admissions tutors, those are the people who will process your applications, and also current students. So there are different questions that you'd ask a lecturer as you'd ask a current student, and it's sensible to jot down the questions so you don't forget them, but also jot down the answers so that you can compare different institutions after the event. The same goes for an apprenticeship open day. Those can be really overwhelming. You might be going into a big professional workplace for the first time, so make sure you know how you're going to get there and what questions you're going to ask. So here are a few examples of questions you might want to ask at an open day. Again, I'm not going to read them all out to you, but I'll give you a minute just to have a read. I'd like to particularly draw your attention to the question for university staff that says, what will make me stand out when writing my personal statement? Particularly if you're applying for a small course, you probably will get to speak to the person who will make a decision about whether you're selected. And so it's an absolute no-brainer to have a conversation with that person about what they look for in a personal statement to make sure you can tailor it to the sort of things that interest them. Because with universities particularly, and indeed I'd say probably apprenticeships, however much we think there's some sort of great system, an awful lot of it comes down to somebody reads the personal statement and they either like it or they don't. And so we can support with things. We know what generally is successful. We know what generally makes a good personal statement. But actually having a conversation with the person who makes a decision is often really sensible. So other things to think about at open days. Firstly, the journey there and back. Now, I cannot emphasize enough that if I were you, I would do it on public transport. I know this is inconvenient, and I know what you want to do is get behind the wheel and drive there because it's easy. However, your child, if they need to come home in term time, unless you're going to be going to pick them up every single time they want to come home, then they're going to be doing public transport. So for your child to make a decision about whether that's something they are comfortable with, I really recommend you go there on public transport. The location in the city. So I would spend time thinking about having some lunch there, having a walk around, maybe try and get the bus into town to see if you could cope with the journey. Look at some accommodation. Think about the relative location of places. It is likely that you might drive between different places for a university or a college or a workplace, but students won't be doing that. It's unlikely they'll have a car, meaning that if they are at their department, their workplace, whatever, and they want to go to the gym, the student union or whatever, they will have to walk or get the bus. So I recommend trying to do that as a walk rather than driving across. What's the vibe? You can tell that from current students. Do they seem to like each other? Are they nice? And then absolutely make a list before you go of anything essential to you. Now, something like your local place of worship, your pride society, whether there's vegan food, whatever it is, seems like a small thing, but when it comes to years of your life will be big. So I recommend making a list of non-negotiables before you set off for that open day and making sure that you've worked out what the non-negotiables, what the answer to those non-negotiables are. Sorry, excuse me. So last year I did this talk and I had a couple of people contacting me and saying, well, that's lovely, but how does my child get volunteering or work experience? Firstly, please be reassured that at Finham Park Sixth Form, we will authorise students time off school to have work experience. Unless they ask for it during their exam week, we will authorise them to have time off school for work experience. I'm also very happy to authorise a regular placement whereby they take one afternoon a week, that will be during their study time, and they can go to the same place every week. We encourage that. Lots of students do it. We have some who go down to the primary school. We have somebody who goes to Cadent on the business park every Thursday afternoon. If your child's interested, let me know. So firstly, if you're interested in volunteering or work experience, the first thing to do is just be cheeky, be brave, and send a letter with your CV. If you need support with your CV, speak to your mentor, they can help you, and just contact them. You can see again a couple of useful links here, which has got a website, which is one website with lots of volunteering available and one with work experience and internships that are available. And so my recommendation is you start there and then you just contact those people and basically be relentless. Keep contacting them and eventually somebody will give you some work experience to get rid of you. I know that sounds a bit blunt, but it does work. Okay. So what should you be doing? What should you be reading? What background reading should you be doing now? So again, make sure that what you're reading is relevant to your chosen course, your chosen job, your chosen apprenticeship. Doing academic reading because you love it is great, but if you want to be able to use it on your application, it's got to be relevant. If you want to apply for university, I recommend looking at university websites and finding their undergraduate reading lists. They often have suggestions for things that students could read. If you want to equip yourself and get ahead, then reading a few things off those reading lists would be a really good start. So students know this, but for the benefit of any parents who don't, students at Finner Park Sixth Form can get access to either Coventry or Warwick university libraries. And so they can go and get those texts that are likely to be on university reading lists and borrow them. If they want to do that, then they just need to see Mrs. Wright in reception, who will give them a pass. That's a specific arrangement we have got. So hopefully they'll find that useful. Our school library is also pretty good, and Mr. Bates, who's our librarian, is good at making recommendations. The other thing is, if you desperately want a book and our library doesn't have it, we can probably buy it for the library so you can borrow it. So just keep in contact with us. So predicted grades, a couple of people contacted me in advance of this meeting to ask for more details about this, so I'm just going to give you details quickly. So as I said at the start of the meeting, predicted grades will be issued on Frog in September of year 13. Students at that point will have a 2-week window to put together an evidence-based appeal if they think that predicted grade is not fair. To be clear, we're not going to change predicted grades because they're not what the student wants, but we are prepared to review them if the student thinks they're not a fair reflection of the work they have done. That means that the appeal has to be evidence-based, so they will need to provide us with evidence of the fact they're capable of a higher grade. This will be reviewed, and then if the evidence is there, then we change the grade. So the year going by, we're in the middle of the appeals process, but thus far I'd say about 50% of the appeals have gone up and 50% haven't. So it is worth having that conversation with your child. The reason I'm telling you about this now is that we do have a couple of students in year 13 who want to appeal but just don't have any evidence because they didn't put enough work in year 12. They may well be capable of getting that higher grade, but they just haven't proved it to us, and we have to be quite strict about that. Unfortunately, we have to be strict to protect future years in the same way that I was strict last year and the year before to protect your children. So as I said here, we won't be predicting anyone a grade we haven't seen evidence they are capable of achieving. So we really hope that they use year 12 effectively to show us what they're capable of. The other thing is, please do speak to your child this side of the summer about realistic university choices, realistic apprenticeship choices, because it would be unfair of us to encourage students to be unrealistic, because students do sometimes end up in a position where they have to go through clearing or they're unsuccessful, and that's heartbreaking for everybody. It really is important to be aspirational, and I'm not saying don't be aspirational, it's essential to be aspirational, but within aspirational, it is sensible to be realistic. Okay, so references, again, I often get questions about this really early on, so I'll talk to you about it now. We provide a reference for every student, regardless of their pathway. This is written by their mentor, but it's contributed to by subject teachers, and we allow students to see their reference before it is submitted. Importantly, the reference will include any mitigating circumstances. So if your family's had a bereavement, a family breakdown, some sort of trauma, or indeed financial hardship, which has had a direct impact on your child's study, then we will be able to mention that in the reference. And actually that can go an awful long way when applications are considered. So if you have any personal circumstances within your family, I know you may not feel comfortable with talking to the child's mentor, but do make sure someone at school is aware, because it's really important that that's mentioned on your child's reference. So what are the next steps? I promise I am nearly done. What are the next steps? So the next big step is the careers days. They will take place on the 11th and 12th of July after the exams. It goes without saying that we will run careers support throughout the year through the mentor programme, and that students will have lots of different opportunities to talk to their mentors about all sorts of different careers. We'll also have a work experience week in June. But the next big thing is the careers days. So there's two pathways. Students will pick whether they want to do the university pathway or a college/apprenticeship pathway, but I will record both. So if students want to listen to both, that'll be fine. So across the 2 days, the first day will be an education day where students will get lots of outside speakers in. They're normally really good days. We'll get lots of outside speakers in and you can see the sort of things that students have delivered to them. I'll give you a minute to read that. And then the second day, for the large part, the students are in their mentor groups writing a draft of their personal statement or CV. And that day is really effective because we put all of them in a computer room. And for the large part, they break the back of their personal statement. So that's really good for their well-being because they break up for the summer. They've already finished their exams by this point. They break up for the summer with a draft. The other thing we have on that day is a careers fair, and that's amazing. That's organised by Mrs. Hook, our careers advisor. She's brilliant. And last year we had about 35 different providers. It's a mixture of education providers and job providers come to talk to us and be there in a sort of fair type layout, and the students have a chance to go round. So that careers fair will be really useful for the students. Early entry. If your child wants to apply for Oxford, Cambridge, veterinary medicine or dentistry, they are early entry. They will have to apply for university in October. That means that they will need to be on the second draft of their personal statement by the start of September. So if your child is interested in that sort of thing, it's important they start thinking about their personal statement by around Christmas. Now, what I'm going to say is going to come across as incredibly brutal. Places on these courses are very, very competitive. Students who want to apply for these things need to have the top predicted grades. They need to have a history of academic excellence that includes their GCSE grades. There will be some students who already are not in a position to apply for these courses. The other thing, if you apply for medicine, dentistry or veterinary medicine and you're unsuccessful, a number of unis will not let you put a second application in the year later. And so these pathways are absolutely brutal. If students are not going to be working at A's and A stars in every subject, there's no point in them applying. However, these courses are amazing, and for the students they work for, they are brilliant. If your child wants to apply for an early entry university course, please ask them to come and see me soon so that they're on my radar, because we run a number of things throughout year 12 to prepare them for that and to help them support. For information, if they want to apply for medicine, dentistry or veterinary medicine, they will definitely have an interview. They'll have to sit an admissions test and they can only apply for 4 courses of that nature. They have to put one other course down as a backup. That's not our rules, that's UCAS's rules. So a couple of last bits to wrap up. Mrs. Hook, our careers advisor, will be able to see a few sixth formers during the year 11 mocks in November. So if your child would benefit from an early appointment from Mrs. Hook, you can see her email address on the screen. I would say these appointments are organised by school email, and sixth form students have a bit of a reputation for making appointments, not checking their emails and then not turning up. So if your child's going to go down this route, please do reinforce with them that they need to absolutely make turning up a priority. In terms of next steps, we don't know yet exactly what their interviews will look like, regardless of whether they want to apply for university or apprenticeships. There are a number of providers that are still having online interviews. That is a mixture of apprenticeship providers, university providers, and some of them are doing face-to-face. So I recommend that students prepare for both. If your child wants to apply for a university course where they might have an interview, it would be sensible for them to have a look at some practice questions. You can find those on the websites. As I said earlier, it's really a good idea to start thinking about a portfolio to submit in advance if your course is that sort of nature. And also, if you want to apply for university, please look up on the university website whether the course you want to apply for will require an admissions test. If it does, then you need to contact Mr. Jeffries, our exams officer. His email is on the screen. The deadline will be September of year 13, so students need to be on it. Again, we have year groups of 200, so I can't take responsibility for every child making sure they've done this. So please do encourage your child to be on it. So Once a student has done this, they will receive offers from universities, colleges, apprenticeship providers over several weeks or months. Some students will have offers the day after they apply. Some students will not get them for months. It's really normal for students to be rejected by at least one university. So do talk to your child about getting used to the idea in advance. Students often find this really hard because there is a group of students every year who've never been rejected from anything, and being rejected from a university is hard. So it's worth reflecting on this in advance. If students apply to university, they will pick two choices. They'll pick a firm choice and then a reserve choice and reject the others. And if they want to go to university and that goes wrong, there are other options. So they don't need to panic. They can apply for something like clearing. If you don't know what clearing is, then on results day, if your child does not get accepted into their university because they didn't get the grades, some more places become available and they can apply at that late stage. As I said, I know all of this can seem overwhelming, and I'm very aware that I have given you an awful lot of information in the last few minutes. The reason for that is I think it's better for you to be prepared than not to have this information, but I recognise it's a lot to process. So firstly, if you've got any quick questions, feel free to type them in the chat and I'll answer them now. If you have any bigger questions, then my email address is on the screen. And as I said, I'm going to send the meeting recording out tomorrow along with the meeting PowerPoint. Please do take the time to go through what I've said with your child, because getting ahead, I cannot reinforce enough how important getting ahead is, because so many options that students really want to do are super competitive. And if they're not ahead, then they are going to disadvantage themselves. So that's pretty much all from me. I'm going to turn my camera and mic off, but as I said, I'll hover, and if anyone puts any questions on the chat, I'll answer them now. If not, I hope you found that useful, and I look forward to seeing you for the next talk in a few weeks, which will be about understanding your child's first progress check. Thank you. Have a nice evening and a great half term when you get there. Mr. Bassey, have you got your hand up? Mr. Bassey, you've got your hand up. How can I help you? I can see another hand up. How can I help?
Yeah, that's me. Just a quick question.
Yes.
So when is the absolute latest a student can change their mind on selecting their final field, basically?
It depends what they want to do. If they want to go to university, they need to put an application in by the end of November. That said, if they apply to university and then change their mind, they can withdraw their application and apply again through clearing. Clearing takes place in August. Again, they could have a gap year. There isn't really a final time, but if they want to apply through the traditional route, then that'll be either November or August. If they want to apply for something like an apprenticeship, then the deadlines for those vary. There'll be anything from around October of year 13 to April of year 13, depending on the field. College courses similar, and jobs, the job market for students leaving year 13 generally is open over the summer of year 13. My recommendation, if your child is unsure, is that they apply for a bit of everything. They pick a university course, apply for that. They also apply for some apprenticeships and some college courses, and that'll give them flexibility. But do remember that there's nothing to panic about, because if they get to the end of year 13 and they hate all of their choices, they can take a gap year, get a job and reflect. Does that help?
Thank you. Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. There don't seem to be any further questions. I'll give it one more minute for someone to type something or say something. If not, then I'm going to end the meeting.